Okay, hey, how are you guys doing? Okay, it's 12 noon, high noon here in Madison, Alabama. And I got a little technical issue here. We're still learning. You'll discover that you never get too old to learn, okay? Now, I want to welcome you to this broadcast, okay? I really do. I'm glad you're here. And I hope if you have any questions, you'll post those on the chat box on your screen, and then we will address those, that's for sure, before we leave, okay? Now, before we get started, I need to read a disclaimer here. We need to comply with the regulations, so here it is. The information presented here is not intended to be taken as medical advice. Do not alter or discontinue medical treatment or the use of medications without the advice of your physician. Your results with L-Arginine Plus may vary from the videos presented here. However, L-Arginine Plus is backed by an unconditional 120-day money-back guarantee. Now, the statements presented here have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Okay, we got that out of the way. All right. Now, let me say this. Here's what this broadcast is about. This is what it's all about. This message is for those of you who have or who are vulnerable to blocked arteries, atherosclerosis, or some kidney issues, or you have friends or family that have those issues. Now, you're going to see that those issues are reversible. You're going to see that clearly, and we're going to talk about that a little. But my point to make is this: why wait until you have atherosclerosis or kidney issues, and then try to reverse them, which we can do? But why wait? Why not take the necessary precautions to provide yourself and to keep from having those issues? Okay. You know, we're a strange group of people. We will spend $2 to cure a situation for every $1 to prevent it, okay? And then think of all the misery and everything you go through and expense after you have the issues. Now, I had some personal experience with that, and a little later in the broadcast, I'm going to share my personal story in that regard, okay? Because I've had some experience, some personal experience. You know, I assumed everything was okay, so I stopped doing what I had been doing for 5 years, and then I had some problems, some complications. So you'll see that, okay? Now, what I'd like for you to do on your screen there, check the live subscribe button on your screen, and then you'll be notified of any future broadcasts that we do. And also, while you're on my page here, if you would like my Facebook page, I'd appreciate that. That would be helpful. So if you would do that, that would be good. Okay. Now, boy, I tell you what, today is just a wonderful day. We've had some good rain. Man, it's been hot and dry here for days. 95, 96, 97. Boy, oh boy, everything was burned up, but man, this rain this morning was so refreshing, okay? I wanted to take my shirt off and get out there in it, but I was afraid the neighbors would report me, okay? so I didn't do that. But I hope you're having a good day where you are, okay? Now, we're going to be talking about nitric oxide. We're going to be talking about that a lot. And then the reference material that I have for you has even more information about nitric oxide. What is nitric oxide? Well, nitric oxide is an element that in the blood vessels that relaxes them, and makes them more flexible, so they can carry the blood to the various tissues and cells with less obstruction. Okay. Now, why is it important that we talk about nitric oxide and adding it today? Well, here's the reason. Our body generates nitric oxide. It doesn't generate it when we're an infant, but when we get the toddler age and from then on up until 25 or 30, the body generates sufficient quantities of nitric oxide. But after 25 or 30, we start losing it. The experts estimate we lose about 2% every year. So if you're 50, then you're going to be generating 40% less nitric oxide. And as you get older, you're going to have even less. And those arteries are going to get hard and stiffen. Hardening of arteries is a big-time problem, okay? The hardening of the arteries and atherosclerosis, those issues are just horrible. The heart disease kills more people than all the others put together. 2,800 people will die today from a heart attack. So it's nitric oxide is just so important. Now, back in and over the years we knew very little about it. Okay, we didn't know a lot about it. But in 1998, 3 scientists had been doing work for over a decade on nitric oxide and what it did for the body, and they were awarded the Nobel Prize in 1998 for medicine. Now you Google Nobel Prize of 1998, and you'll see that story. There are 3 of them, and one of them has written a book that's just very, very good, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and you can get that on my website. Now here's what you need to do. Write down my website, bazhealth.com, bazhealth.com. And because I want you to go there, and there's a lot of information there that will be helpful for you, okay? bazhealth.com. And then be sure and visit my Facebook page. You're on it now, but come back and visit again, because there's information there that will be helpful for you. I just want you to have the information. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just eliminate the pain and the anguish and the heartache of so much of this cardiovascular issues? It would be just wonderful. You would feel good, and your family would feel good, and it'd just be a better situation. Now, here's the interesting thing. Nitric oxide is not new, even though we haven't known much about it. But for over 100 years, we use nitric oxide to relieve heart attacks and pains and angina. But we didn't know why. We didn't know how it worked. In fact, in 2000, I had a routine exam, and they discovered a couple of blocked arteries. So they went in and put a stent there, a couple of stents there. Now, I had never had any symptoms. That was in 2000. And I never had any symptoms until 2015. And I'll talk about that in my story in a few minutes. But here's what I'm going to talk about the nitric oxide. When I left the doctor's office, when he discharged me, he gave me a little bottle of pills like this. I said, "What are those, Doc?" He said, "Those are nitroglycerin pills." I said, "What? Nitroglycerin? I've always pictured that as something going to blow up something." He says, "No, if you have a heart attack, if you have any pain, you take one of these little tablets, these little tiny tablets, put it under your tongue and let it dissolve. And it will relieve that pain almost immediately." I said, "Wow." I said, "How does that work, Doc?" He said, "Well, we don't know. We don't know." They didn't discover until 2 years later, in 2002, that the little nitroglycerin tablet adds nitric oxide to your blood vessels. Now, don't think you can take these pills every day to keep your blood vessels relaxed, because there's some severe side effects here that you don't want to deal with. But you could get the nitric oxide with supplementation, and we'll talk about that, okay? Now, one of the leading physicians, Dr. Joseph Prendergast, has probably done more research in this area of cardiovascular health and L-Arginine, nitric oxide, than anybody else. Now, I've got a bio here early, but I'm not going to read this, okay? Rather, I'm going to ask you to Google Dr. Joe Prendergast, Prendergast, Joe Prendergast, okay? And you'll see, there's just page after page of stories about him in Google. Now, I will give you this information. Dr. Prendergast has tested and documented the result of over 6,000 of his own patients with stunning results. 80% of those 6,000 were diabetics, and none of those diabetics had suffered heart bypass or transplant, okay? And for the last 20 years, Dr. Prendergast has been refining and improving his proprietary blend and recently agreed with Synergy to collaborate to produce what we know now is Pro-Arginine Plus. Pro-Arginine Plus is the precursor of the nitric oxide, okay? Now, again, there's a lot of information here about the doctor, but you Google him. Google Dr. Joe Prendergast, and you'll see clearly that he's an authority that you can rely on. In fact, he's an MD. He's an MD. He has as well as a degree in endocrinology and metabolism. Okay, as well as an MD, and he had in his lifetime serviced over 6,000 diabetics in his practice. Okay. So Google him. Now, I have my own story about reversing this blockage, okay? I mentioned to you, by the way, I see a question coming in here. How do I get the Pro-Arginine? Well, Baz, that question, well, you go to my website, bazhealth.com, and you'll have information there. But more important, contact me. You can reach me. My phone number is there. My email address is there. And I'm available, okay? I'm available. I'm not hiding out somewhere, behind a computer, okay? But that'll do that. Now, if any of you others have any questions, be sure and post them there, and let me take care of that, okay? Now, here's my story, okay? Here's my story. I mentioned earlier, in 2000, I had, through a routine exam, they discovered I had some blockage. They went in and replaced 2 stents in one of the arteries. I don't know that I need them, but I got them. They're not going anywhere. I've had them for 16 years now, so I'm going to bless them, okay? So they're there. But never had any symptoms. But let me tell you, when they put stents in your heart, it works on your mind. Yeah. And you realize that you're vulnerable. And this old ticker may need some help at any time. You realize that. So, having been a health and wellness advocate for over 30 years, now my emphasis is in cardiovascular health. And boy, I started reading and researching and gathering YouTube videos and testimonies galore. I've got a library that's loaded with that information. So I started working on that, getting that information together. Well, in 2011, a friend of mine came by and introduced me to a nitric oxide precursor supplement. And he mentioned the benefits of nitric oxide, how they relax the blood vessel and make them more flexible. And so I caught on right away because I'm thinking about the stent I got in here, okay? So I started drinking the Pro-Arginine. Now the Pro-Arginine comes in little tubes like this. One tube is 1 serving. Now I prefer to buy it in the large bulk. Why? Because, the cost per serving is about half, just about half of the tube. Now one of these little scoops is equal to one of these, okay? Now if you don't have any cardiovascular issues, for maintenance, two servings a day would be plenty, I'm sure. But if you have some issues, as I did, I'd take 4 servings of Pro-Arginine Plus a day, 2 in the morning, 1 at noon, 1 at night, okay? Now that's my experience. Now don't worry about this because you can drink this for 120 days. And if you don't feel better and if you're not convinced that this is helping you, save those containers and send them in and you'll get a refund. No questions asked, okay? 120 days. That's almost 4 months, okay? Now, so I started drinking the Pro-Arginine in 2012. okay, 2011. Now, 2012, I have a life screening report. I get one of these every year. I've done this for years. I would recommend them for you. Cost about $125 or $150 a year, and it's well worth it. I love them. Now, here's the lab report in 2012 before I was drinking the Pro-Arginine, okay? Now look at this. Look at the red there. You see that top one? That's the left carotid, or that's the main artery on the left side. The blockage was significant. Now look down below. The peripheral arteries, those are the two main arteries running down your legs. Those were classified as abnormal. Abnormal, yeah. Now, look here. I drink this Pro-Arginine, you know, for a year, 4 servings a day, and then I had a lab report done 1 year later, August the 26th, almost to the day, 2013. Now look, the red is gone. The left carotid, which was classified as significant, now is moderate. And the right artery was classified as moderate, now it's mild. And looking down here, these peripheral arteries, they're normal. They went from abnormal to normal, okay? Now, I'm about to sneeze, and I hope you'll forgive me if I do. So cover your face, okay? Now, in 2014, this is typical of all of us. You know, I was having no issues, no symptoms. I never had a heart symptom from 2000 until 2014. 14 years. So I stopped drinking the Pro-Arginine. Mine went out to lunch. I don't know why. Well, I do too. I was feeling okay, and I didn't think I needed it any longer. Now, 1 year later, I had some heart symptoms. Now, also, here I had my life screening test the year after I stopped, and that blockage up there is back to significant, and the peripheral arteries are back to abnormal. They go from normal to abnormal. They went from normal to abnormal, back to normal, and it's obvious they're here. Now I'll share these lab reports with you. I'd be happy to, okay? Because I want you to have the information. And if you've got some loved ones that are hurting, I want you to know about this, that's all. And you can decide what to do, okay? Now go to my website, bazhealth.com, okay? And you'll see there, you'll see some books. One of them is No More Heart Disease. Now this was written by one of the scientists who won the Nobel Prize, okay? And then you'll see an article here by Dr. Bolger, okay? The Power of Nitric Oxide. The Power of Nitric Oxide, okay? Now, here's something that very few people are aware of, okay? Pro-Arginine, this product, okay, is listed in this physician's desk reference. This is published every year, and Pro-Arginine is listed in here. You can go there and see it's a full-page listing. And here's what they say in this physician's desk reference about Pro-Arginine. It says, the PDR, that's a physician's desk reference, states that Pro-Arginine is the highest quality L-Arginine supplement in the world. And Pro-Arginine was formulated in collaboration with leading scientists and cardiovascular specialists who have conducted extensive research on the proper application of L-Arginine in promoting health heart. So if people say, well, there's no scientific research, well, they're just wrong. There's probably 20,000 articles published in the last 5 years alone on L-Arginine and Pro-Arginine, okay? So here's what I want you to do now. We're going to wind this up. We've been here about 17 minutes. I want you to go to my website, bazhealth.com, go back to my Facebook page and like that, okay? And then I want you to send me an email. And if you want additional information, I'll provide it for you, okay? That's my role. I'm the messenger, okay? And what I think about is what a wonderful feeling you or one you love will have when they see the same results of the lab test as I experienced. You go from significant blockage to moderate in the left artery, carotid, and you go from moderate to mild in the right one after a year. Okay. Now, if I would have had the lab test done 6 months, it probably would have showed up then, but I didn't. I had it done almost a year to the day. So do that if you would. Go to my website. I want to help you. I think this would just be the greatest thing if we could just reduce. As I mentioned, 2,800 people are going to die today, and 40% of the people who have a heart attack, boy, they only get one warning, and that's it. Now it's interesting. After I quit drinking L-Arginine, I had my first symptom. Boy, oh boy. I didn't have that sharp pain and the sweat and the throwing up and none of that. Just I had a little trouble breathing, and I knew something was wrong. So that morning early, I got everything together, and I called 911, and they hauled me into the hospital, okay? Boy, oh boy. 3 days there, tests galore, 3 doctors, and they checked me out of there and sent me home with prescription for $400 worth of strong medications, and I took them. And about 3 days later, I had terrible side effects. I woke up that morning and reached over on the nightstand to get the phone. I just fell out of bed. And I got up after a while, and I couldn't walk across the room without holding on to something. I said, man, I'm going to have a wheelchair to get around here in the house. So I called my primary care physician. Now, that's what you should do, okay? I called him. I said, doctor, I'm going to have to drop some of these medications because they're killing me. I said, if I go to Memphis to visit my daughter and had an accident, I might bleed to death before I got to the hospital, okay? So I'm going to stop some of these. So I stopped all of them ultimately. And I started drinking the L-Arginine. I went from 3 servings to 4. I've been drinking it now for about 3 or 4 months, and I feel so much better. I've never had any more symptoms, okay? And you can experience that too, okay? You can experience that too. I know you can. So let me hear from you, and I'll be delighted to help you. Now, I don't see any more questions here, so I don't have anything else. So what I'm going to do is sign off, and I wish you well, and I'll see you next Thursday at noon, okay? Okay, and listen, you have a great day, all right? Okay.